Alright, hello everyone. Welcome to my live stream. And we're going to talk about bugs. And today I'm going to be starting a brand new project, so I'm kind of excited about that. But I wanted to finish up with the project that I started last time, or I've been working on for a while. So I kind of want to show how that ended up. And just give me a second here to get sorted out. There we go. Just want to make sure I can see the chat. Okay, so the last bunch of sessions, I forget how many, couple months, I've been working on this original Wasp design, and I'm finally declaring it done. And this is what it looks like in ZBrush. But last week, if you watched the live stream from last week, I did some renders using Redshift directly here in ZBrush. So I want to I did a few more renders offline, so I want to show those results before I get into the new project. So these are the final renders from ZBrush using Redshift. So, I mean, I think they're pretty cool. For the most part, I'm pleased. Yeah, there's some things that I want to improve about them. I want to work on the hair a bit more and add even more realism to the lighting. But I think for renders right out of ZBrush, these are pretty good. Once again, like if this is something that I wanted to show for client for concepting, you know, it's nice and fast. I don't have to set everything up in Maya or Cinema 4D or Blender or anything like that. Just rendering right out of ZBrush, so it's really great for that. And you know, I used fiber mesh for the hair on the plants, as well as you can see on the thorax to get some nice depth of field going in the render here, some nice transparency and reflections. I like how the details on the wing came out. I'm pleased with that. Overall, you know, the poly paint, the metallic material, it's a Redshift material, but you can see how it enhanced the poly paint quite a bit. So yeah, there's a few things I still want to change. I think the muscles on the wings got a little bit out of hand. I like them to be a bit more elegant. Then you can see I have kind of an intersection problem right there, so I got to fix that in the pose. But you know, the eyes came out really nice, and I think so did the hair, and I think a lot of the other details. So overall, I think it was a fun project, and I'm really, I want to thank everybody who kind of stuck with me and watched me develop this over the past few months. I think it's really cool. And I'll be adding these renders to my website pretty soon. So wanted to, before we get started, let's talk about a couple things. I am working on my YouTube channel, finally getting it under control. So it is at Bloopatone, and I've added a bunch of new videos on here, as well as some shorts, some ZBrush stuff that you can check out, all insect related, well, mostly insect related. And so you can check out my YouTube channel, and then also if you want to see my portfolio, it's available at bloopatone.com. It's my ArtStation portfolio, and you can see all the bugs and other critters and other things that I've been working on over the past few years, even some non-critter stuff. So check out my website if you get a chance. And I also have some courses on Udemy. So if you go to Udemy and look up Eric Keller, you'll find I have a brand new course on demystifying ZBrush materials. So this goes over how to create your own materials, whether it's standard ZBrush materials, matte cap materials, or Redshift materials. So talk about rendering with Redshift and rendering with ZBrush BPR rendering, and all the little nuances, and of course all the settings in the materials. How to use, you know, multi-shader materials and the mixer so that you can create some really interesting looks by blending materials together. And of course, you know, everything you need to do to make your own materials. You can save them, share them with other ZBrush artists, sell them on ArtStation. So it's a really great place if you wanted to finally get familiar with ZBrush materials. And then I have a couple other courses, one for ZBrush for jewelry designers. This is the fundamentals. This is really the ultimate fundamental course on ZBrush, targeted towards jewelry designers. So there's an emphasis on those parts of the program that are useful for creating castable 3D prints. But it does go over all of the basics of ZBrush. And then I have ZBrush for jewelry designers, understanding ZBrush geometry. And again, this one, it could apply to anybody who wants to learn what is the difference between Dynamesh and nanomesh and subdivision surfaces and parametric 3D models and all the various different geometry types, how to use them, when to use them, whether you're creating it for jewelry or you just want to know for ZBrush in general. So I just break down, each chapter goes through a different geometry type in ZBrush, and there's a lot of them actually. And you know, it's a question I get from students a lot of times: when do I use Dynamesh, when do I use Sculptris Pro, and that kind of thing. So check out my Udemy courses online, and let me know what you think. And of course, you can also post questions. And you know, if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, feel free to post questions in my videos, and I will answer them. So I add more and more tutorials on there. Let's see, and then we want to talk about what I'm going to do today. So I'm going to switch things up, and instead of doing a made-up bug, I'm going to do a real bug. So I'm going to make it from scratch over the next few live sessions. So let's meet the bug that I'm going to make, and it is a long-haired beetle. I mean long-horn beetle, not long-hair beetle. It's like a hippie or something. So let's see if we can check it out. I don't know if you can see this. It'll focus on it, but don't worry, I have lots of reference images that I'm going to show on this thing. But I just want to show that it's really great if you actually have, you know, a dead bug that you can use for reference right in front of you. It makes a huge difference because then you can see the 3D shapes. You can also take your own pictures and stick it under a microscope, and it's the best way. I think one of the best ways to work with bugs. So I have a nice little collection of bugs. They're kind of dusty and gross, but they're very useful. Whether you're trying to, even if you're just reference, a lot of these bugs, I wanted to shout out. Let me see if I can pull up the website and show you where I get these things. I go to bug fairs here in Los Angeles at the Natural History Museum, and I'll pick up some bugs, but you can also order online. One website that I like to use is the Butterfly Company. And you can order all kinds of cool insects and insect-related things here. All right, fine. Give me some cookies. I don't care. And they have all different categories. It's called the Butterfly Company, but they have lots of other stuff, not just butterflies. I believe that's where I got my longhorn beetle. And it's been sitting in my collection for a long time, just waiting to be modeled. So today is the day we're going to start in that. And I'm going to show you the reference. This morning, I took out my camera, dusted it off, and took a whole bunch of reference images in a light box. So I'm going to open up my Pure Ref so you can see them. And so here is some better images of what we're going to be modeling. And these are nice high resolution images, lots of different views. I'll probably take even more because you can never have too many. This, of course, is a dead bug, so it's going to be somewhat desiccated and gross. So it's also a good idea to look online. I didn't get as many great pictures of the face of this one, at least not this morning. I'll get some more when I get a chance. So I found some pictures online. A nice creepy looking dude. And lots of pictures of the legs and close-ups of the various parts that I know is usually hard to find online. So I want to make an offer to everybody who's watching. I have all these images in a zip folder, which I'm going to stick on Dropbox. And if you want these images, I will send them to you on one condition. You got to go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. Like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's at Bluepatone. And so if you subscribe and send me a message through the YouTube channel with the word Beetle, B-E-T-L-E. Sorry, I'm thinking the band there. I will send you a link to the Dropbox folder, and you can download all the reference images that I'm using. Great for your collection of references the next time you want to make a creepy insect creature, or if you want to model this bug or whatever. So subscribe to my YouTube channel at Bluepatone. Send me a message through the YouTube channel that says Beetle, and I will send you a link to the Dropbox file. I'll do that after today's broadcast. So let's see how to start this guy. Lots of different ways to start a bug using photographic reference. I think the first most useful thing to do would be to get some reference in here so I can at least block out the overall shape. So I have a couple right here. It was hard to get the entire bug in here, but I get enough so I can get the basic proportions of the body. So, and then I'll use the rest of these for detailing. So maybe what I'll do is I'll bring in one of these images and stick it, like this one maybe, and stick it in the background. So let's do a quick review of how to do that. Go to the texture palette and choose import. And then, let's see, we will, this one, let's import a few of them. And I don't have these lined up or stacked or anything like that. That would be cool to do that at some point, but for today, I think this should be good enough. Do these two, and then this one, and this one. And we'll start with those. Oh, that's a good one too. All right, so it's going to import those images. They're really high res, so it's a little bit slow. Excuse me. Now I'm going to turn off perspective and turn on the floor. Let's turn on Z for the floor. Make sure it's actually on. And we'll go into draw. And I'm going to do front, back. And let's do this guy. Okay, so now we can see we have a reference image. What it would be nice is let's edit this a little bit. So I'm going to turn on transparency. Actually, that's not going to do anything. I'm going to go into the draw palette and mess with the settings here a little bit. So we go to the fill mode. If I set this to 3, then we can see through the geometry. And I'm going to bring up the enhance factor. And then let's see if we can do a little bit of rotation here. Just to get a little bit straighter. Remember, when you click on one of these dials here, there's a little smaller dial that appears above it. You can use that for fine tuning. Rotation, and let's do horizontal offset. I'm going to make this as, you know, generally with these guys, you know, if the image is asymmetrical, what I'll do is I'll just like model out one side or focus on one side and make it perfectly symmetrical to begin with, and then build in asymmetry as I go. So let's do this. At the very least, we can use this for a block out. Okay, and then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save the project. Saving the project as opposed to the tool, because that way I know it will save the reference image, so I have to redo that, re-import everything next time. So I'm going to call this Longhorn Beetle 01. Which part of the industry do you see these types of models in? Sorry to have much knowledge in this area. Okay, that's a really good question. My career, so I've been doing CG, visual effects, since 1998 professionally, so a long time. But I started out doing scientific visualization at a place called the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. Yes, it's a real place. And so I spent many years working with scientists and that kind of thing. That's why I kind of have a scientific bias towards my work. I moved out to Hollywood, Los Angeles in 2005. Then I started working in the visual effects industry. So I did some motion graphics, visual effects, title work, all commercials, virtual reality, planetarium shows, all kinds of different stuff. And I worked for freelance for a bunch of different companies. And this kind of stuff has come into play even in the entertainment industry. Having that kind of knowledge has been really helpful. So I got to work on at Bad Robot way back in, was it 2015 or so? I worked on 10 Cloverfield Lane, and that was kind of fun because I got the job because I had this sort of experience with insects and creatures and that kind of stuff, and they wanted to make this big monster. They wanted to have insect-y kind of designs on it, and I knew somebody worked there. So long story short, I got a job and I got to model a cool monster for the end of that movie. Also, when I worked on Wednesday, the title sequence, I got to use bring in a fly and a spider model. So I did the spider model, and I've done lots of spiders, so it was nice and quick. And then, you know, I'm also work with museums. I worked with a museum in New Zealand creating 3D prints of various arthropods and isopods and other invertebrates. And I'm also working with a museum in Germany to kind of create digital taxonomy. So it goes in everywhere. But, you know, the thing is that that I think is useful to know is this, like, one of the reasons I got into bugs in the first place is because of the writings of E.O. Wilson. And how much do you make as a 3D sculptor for printing in a month? I'm not going to answer that because that's too variable. It's too difficult to answer that question. But with the bugs, I got to work on a planetarium show, and the other thing is like, it's like character designers study human anatomy extensively, right? But I see most creature designers focus primarily on mammals and reptiles, mainly dinosaurs, horses, dogs, bears, lions, those kinds of things. And then, you know, crocodiles and that kind of stuff. But I've seen very few people really focus on arthropods to the point, you know, arthropods are every bit as complicated as any other type of animal. So I wanted to specialize in that. And it helps a lot with creature design. So, okay, so enough talking, let's get into sculpting. Hopefully that answers your question. But it's been a real helpful, and it's also just helped me in my sculpting because it helps me pay attention to detail when I'm sculpting. So that's a really big part of it as well. It's a great way to develop your chops. Okay, so I'm going to do this as a ZSphere model, I think. And let's turn on symmetry on the x-axis. And I'm going to scale this down. Sorry, scale this down. And I'm going to make this my root Z-sphere. So where I'm going to put this is probably in the thorax right here, in the center of the mesothorax. So the thorax of beetles is often divided into several sections. I believe this is a mesothorax right here, but whatever. If you're a beetle expert, you can correct me. I just want to get something going here. So I'm going to press Q for draw, and then draw another Z-sphere, and move it down here, and maybe scale it up a little bit. All right, so that's what my Z-spheres look like. And it's always a difficult question to ask, you know, how much do you make in the industry? Because the industry, at least in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, is largely freelance, mostly. Yes, there are people who work at studios, but you guys know that studios lay people off all the time. And when you're laid off, what are you? You're freelance. So income varies. It's not a profession to get into if you're concerned about having a steady income that grows over years. You have to be prepared for droughts and other things like writer strikes and COVID and that kind of stuff. And guess what? The industry right now is in a serious drought because of the writer strike. Not that I blame the writers, but it's still just now in the process of recovery. So it's always hard to say, you're going to earn this much. If you're concerned about making a steady income, become an accountant and do ZBrush as a hobby. That's my best advice for that. I do think that there needs to be more people in the industry that know more about biology and actual, you know, beyond human anatomy. I think more museums are starting to clue into the fact that a digital taxonomy, which is kind of what I'm doing, is a really useful thing to have a digital collection of bugs, because like for what I'm doing for this German museum is I'm creating models based on scan data that they've provided, really high quality scan data. And so I'm working with a scientist who does the scans, and I'm making these sort of animation ready models. But I also want to make the models so that they can easily be converted into 3D print or virtual reality, or just something that they have as a basis so that going forward they can use it for a number of different purposes. Excuse me for just a sec. I think it's a really useful thing, and museums are starting to realize how useful this is. The nice thing is that with beetles alone, there are some 400,000 known species of beetle. So guess what? That means there's a lot of beetles out there, and they vary wildly in their anatomy. This is not a situation where you can say seen one beetle, you've seen them all. And you know, scan data is getting really good, obviously, with like AI and stuff like that. It's helping get the scans better, but it still need, at this point in time, they still need a lot of work to get them in a state that's actually kind of useful. You know, because if you look at most scan data, it's like if you look at Sketchfab, you'll find some really cool free models or some inexpensive 3D scans. A lot of times they look great because they have a texture applied, but you turn the texture off and it's just a blob of goo. And if you don't really understand insect anatomy, then it's hard to turn that into something useful. Of course, the best way to learn insect anatomy is just to do it. So I recommend, you know, the next time you want to do, you know, fill your head with some knowledge, go to like Sketchfab or TurboSquid or other places online, get an inexpensive or free 3D scan data, take it into ZBrush, and get some high res reference of the same model and sculpt away. It's the best way to learn. The first few insect models I made were absolutely terrible. And the funny thing is, of course, you know, the hubris of human beings. I made a few models to start off with, and I got very excited, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to invent my own insects, you know, because I made 2 or 3 models. And my first insects that I made were just absolutely terrible. They were awful. And that's when I realized I needed much more practice. It's just like, if you know, it's the same thing with doing like character modeling. You just got to practice the hell out of it until you really feel comfortable. Hello, Brazil. Do visual effects artists and game artists have a union in the U.S.? They're starting to make more unions. There's Animators Guild. I'm sure there's some other ones, VFX. If you go to SIGGRAPH, they usually have a booth there that they're working on getting unions. It's important because VFX artists do get abused a lot in the industry in terms of the pay that they make and the hours that they work. Sometimes the credit they get, so it's an important thing. I'm not currently a member of the union at the moment, but I know some people who are, and like I said, I tend to work freelance most of the time, so I do a variety of things. I also have my own home studio, which is where I do a lot of my work. That's a little bit harder to come by. Link to my YouTube channel. Let me see. I'm going to post this in here. Here's a link to my YouTube channel in the chat. So once again, send me subscribe to me on YouTube. Send me a message when you do with the word Beetle in it. Then I'll send you a link to where you can download the reference images that I'm using. So you can see I'm focusing on this side, keeping it symmetrical. I'm not going to worry about this side being off too much because it's inevitable. Although whoever pinned this bug did a very good job of keeping it very symmetrical. So that's real help. So usually with a lot of these types of bugs, what I'll do is I'll start out with the ZSphere blockout. So something very simple. And get that going, and as you'll see, I'll turn it into a Dynamesh model, and then start splitting it up into polygroups. So the antenna on these guys are super long. Same with those front arms. I mean, look at the front arms on this guy. Totally crazy. So I'm gonna have to kind of guesstimate how long that is, because it won't fit into. Let's see. Another way you can get reference going in ZBrush is to use Spotlight. So let me turn off the floor for a second. If I go in here and I'm going to draw, texture, let me choose, let me import another one. All right, where'd you go? Hold on just a sec. Okay, let's see where I can see most of the. Can select this guy and add it to Spotlight. Let's see, I'm going to get the opacity down. I just want to get a general sense for how long these arms are. Legs, sorry, bugs don't have arms. Oops. I'm gonna freeze the camera here, and there we go. Now Q and W. Do that will work. Need to make the antenna really, really long. Really, 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 really long. Oh, so cool. All right, and then this guy could be a bit longer. Do this. I don't generally make my ZSphere models overly detailed. I just want to keep it nice and simple. Okay. Shift Z to turn off Spotlight, and so here is our blockout. So let's save this sucker. Yeah, I took the pictures this morning, actually. So I wouldn't say they're the greatest pictures in the world. I just kind of snapped them in a light box that I had, and then I threw them into Adobe Lightroom and just did some quick enhancements, some denoising. Nothing spectacular, just enough so I could see. Like this is decent. Like I say, great for texture reference. So I'm not giving away anybody else's photographs. I'm only giving away my photographs. I have a lot of friends who are photographers, and I want to respect their craft. But yeah, I mean, you get some really cool reference in here. Again, you know, I didn't do any focus stacking or anything like that because I didn't have time. But focus stacking is a good way to get much more clear images. I used to do a lot more photography. I just haven't had the time recently to do as much photography, so I got to get back into it. But this brings out the point that I always like to make. The bugs are very hairy. They may not look like it from far away, but they are super hairy. All right, let's get to some fun stuff. Okay, so press A to see a preview. It's going to go to Dynamesh mode by default. I think that's okay. You can go in here to the adaptive skin settings and actually change the density. I might make it a little bit lower density. If you don't want Dynamesh, you can set the Dynamesh resolution to 0, hit A and A again, and then you're going to get the old school kind of meshing, adaptive meshing. If you want the really old school, turn on classic skinning and do preview, and this is ancient ZBrush skinning, which can be useful sometimes. It does a pretty good job. But I'm going to do Dynamesh instead. That's too much. Let's turn off classic skinning. Bring this down to, let's say, 64. That's too low. Let's do 128. I think that'll work. And you can see it's already got polygroups, although I'll probably create my own polygroups. Okay, so let's choose make adaptive skin. What I usually do is, you know, when you make an adaptive skin from a ZSphere, it saves as a separate object. I usually like to append it to the ZSphere model just to have them both in the same tool. So I'll rename this one ZSphere. Well, it's already a ZSphere. I'm just call it. Okay, so now that we have that, let's turn on solo. I'm going to use my favorite material, which is this mod dirty blue. And let's start sculpting. So seems like for this guy, might be a good idea to focus on the underside, at least at first. Oh, that's a nice picture of the underside, if I do say so myself. I'm going to keep this over here. Whoops. Why do we keep doing that? Okay. Now I just need to find my stylus, and I'm going to use my TW clay tubes. Clay tubes brush is usually good from this one with low Z intensity, and then I'm going to start to just block it in. I have a second screen that I'm using for reference as well. Okay. Blocking the eyes and the mouth here. This one's cool because it's one of those bugs where the eyes kind of wrap around the antenna. I always find that really cool. And then I'm not going to worry about the mouth parts just yet. All right, you know I'm gonna put it there. I'm gonna crush it because I'm putting a beer on it or something stupid. I think what I'll do is switch to. I'm going to do split hidden. That'll be the antenna. Let's do the legs next. Quick tip, if you want to grow the selection, Control-Shift-X grows the selection. So if you don't quite get the selection you need, that can be really helpful. So I'm going to do split hidden right here. Let's turn on double-sided. Display properties, double-sided. If I really wanted to get complicated, I would see if I could find some reference that actually shows the wings on this thing, because it does actually have wings. They're just hidden under the elytra. See, with beetles, a lot of beetles, not all beetles, most beetles, maybe all beetles, I don't know, I forget. You know, most insects have two pairs of wings, front wings and hind wings, back wings. Think of a dragonfly, right? Pretty obvious they have four wings. Dragonflies are some of the oldest insects, so if you look for ancient insect design, dragonflies are the way to go. With a number of insects, those hind wings or the front wings have evolved over time, different functions. With flies, the hind wings shrunk all the way down to these little things called halteres. So they only have two wings, and then they have these little nubbity nubs that they use kind of like as a gyroscope. That's why flies can be so acrobatic. Not all flies, but a lot of flies are like that. Actually, no, all flies, yeah. With beetles, their front wings changed into the elytra, which is this hard surface you see on the back right here, it's like a shield. And then the actual flying wings are hidden underneath here. And what they do is a lot of them will hold up the elytra while they're flying with their front legs. And beetles, it's great to watch beetles fly in slow motion because they're really clumsy. I mean, they look just incredibly stupid. It's awesome. So it can be hard sometimes to find good reference for those hidden wings on beetles, but I'm sure it's out there. There's some cool, I think AntLab is the YouTube site that has lots of slow motion footage of insects flying and jumping and stuff like that. They have hundreds of videos, absolute required reference for modelers, but especially animators as well. And I do try and animate my insects whenever I can. I use Maya right now, but I'm switching over to Unreal, and I'm going to force myself to learn some Blender as well, because Maya is expensive. Let's bring back our floor here and do a little move brush. So you can see how, as we zoom in here, it's really cool because this is the bottom of the elytra. It has a couple of spikes on it. It's very, very straight as well. And then this is the abdomen right here. Going on the thorax, so that's the edge of the elytra right there, so I'm not going to worry about that just yet. And then looking at the underside. And if I have to move the legs, that's fine. I just want to block them out and get some geometry going. So I'm going to switch over to my SK cloth brush. SK is for, I can't remember. I can never pronounce his name, but he's also a Z live streamer. Sakaki. Sakaki has great brushes on his Gumroad site. So if you're not watching his live stream, you should check it out. And also check out his brushes, because since I started using them, I kind of can't live without them. The SK cloth is one of my favorites, even though it's not like a dynamic cloth brush. It's just called, I think he invented it before they added dynamic cloth to ZBrush. So it's really great for doing cloth folds and that kind of stuff. But I use it kind of the way I used to use the Damien Standard brush as sort of my etching brush. So just like the way it looked, there were handles. So I'm going to increase the resolution here. Sorry, I got so much reference on my other screen. I'm missing. What you want to do is, if you can't message me, yeah, comment on the video and then leave me an email address or something where I can send you a link to the Dropbox. But generally speaking, if you subscribe, then I'll get a notification when you subscribe. And if that fails, just send me an email. That's my email. I'm probably going to regret posting that, but since I get so much spam already, I mean, what else is going to happen that hasn't happened already? Remember back in the old days when you used to get an email? It was exciting. Ooh, I got an email. Now I get 10,000 emails a minute and none of them are useful. I get excited about getting real mail now. That's awesome. Reaching that mailbox, you get something that's actually addressed to you. That's super special. Come full circle. It's like getting a phone call from somebody you actually want to talk to. Rare, but it happens. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start separating this out even further. So, I don't want to get too detailed before I start making this into pieces. So let's break off the head here. Split hidden. Rename this head. I kind of do this when I work with scan data too. I'll take the scan data, it'll be all like, and I just spend some time cleaning it up a little bit and then splitting it into parts as soon as I can. So let's do this, which is the mesothorax. You can see it definitely has a separate. So there's the head, separation of the head. And then this is cool because it has these little spiketies right here. Nice and dangerous. This guy's got some spikes here and there. This is the stuff that I just can't wait to work on though. That's what I live for. All that detail. It's so much fun. And look at the textures on here. I mean, that's just awesome. Okay, so let's do this. I don't want to necessarily worry about getting the proportions perfect. I just want them close at this point. And I'm just going to read Dynamesh, which closes the holes. And then, okay. Eventually we're going to separate this into top and bottom, or we can actually draw out the elytra extraction. But for now, I'm going to do this. That's the bottom. This is the top. And it looks like the top kind of does this kind of thing. See if I can get a good image of the top here. Oh, there's one. Beetles generally have this sort of, it's not as pronounced on this, but you can see it's a little bit of a triangle shape. I'm going to do it kind of exaggerated. And then the split down here, and then what software are you doing low poly for rigging? So what I will do, generally speaking, is I do a combination of, you know, so at first I worry about the shape, so I do kind of high poly Dynamesh all the way up to a certain point where I'm starting to dial in the details. I usually think of Dynamesh as being kind of like sketching, when you're loosely sketching out the lines. So I'll spend some time in that. Eventually, though, I'll switch over to using ZRemesh just to create a low poly version that I can subdivide, because it's easier to sculpt when you have a model that has subdivisions when you start to get into detailing. Now with bugs you can get away with a lot. You can get away with ZRemesh quite a bit because ZRemesh has gotten a lot better over the past few versions. So depending on the part that you're working on, sometimes ZRemesh will be good well enough that I don't need to retopologize it. Other parts that I know need to deform, I need to rig, and I want to get very specific in the topology, I'll either use ZModeler brush and ZBrush to do like a hand topology, or I'll take it to Maya and do quad draw. And I use Maya just because I've been using it for freaking ever, but you could do the same thing in Blender or any modeling tool that has decent topology brush stuff. So it's usually a combination of ZBrush and Maya. But like I say, I'm kind of more interested in getting into Blender and using that more often. So another thing I'll do is I'll take my clay tubes brush and just kind of go over this really quickly, just to kind of work out some of the lumps and bumps. Again, kind of like a sketchy kind of thing. And maybe what I'll do is, maybe it's time to kind of separate the bottom from the top and then dial in the sections of the abdomen. So this is the top. And let's take a look here. So it's almost kind of like a cockroach in a way. No offense to Mr. Beetle. Cockroaches are Blatodia, beetles are Coleoptera. So you can see this is kind of what the side looks like. So fairly thin overall. Mine's probably a bit thicker than it needs to be, so I'm going to squish it just a little bit. And then I'm going to, it's a pretty neat division. So I'm going to do this and split hidden. And then let's dial in the abdomen. That reminds me, I should save. Let's do save next. Yeah, I think beetle wings are pretty difficult. I've done it on fireflies and then a couple other ones. But yeah, they're difficult because they fold. Wasp wings are tricky too, only because they fold kind of like a taco when they're at rest, and that can be a little bit difficult to rig. I mean, if you have them open, they're not that hard, but getting them to fold correctly can be kind of tricky. The Ant Lab YouTube channel I mentioned is great because it has a lot of slow motion photography of beetle wings unfolding. It gives you a good sense of their anatomy and how they work. I'm just kind of drawing this in for now. Okay, so this is part of the elytra right here. You can also do draw project on surface or project on mesh. And also this in. A lot of times I'm kind of sculpting something and then resculpting it again, just because it shifts as I work. That's pretty normal. Let's see. You know, I mean, eventually, you know, sometimes when you get one of these, it's not a bad idea to get two, because that way you can destroy one and not worry about it. Because I could pry off the wings off of these things and see what's on the underside. I hate to do that though, because it's such a nice, adorable model, you know. But it's a possibility if I get really desperate to do it. Hey Juan, how you doing? Yeah, rhino beetles are a lot of fun too. I did a cool AR project with a Goliath beetle for let's see, it's on my website. This is a fun one that I did a while back. This one right here. So this is Goliath, I think. So it was an augmented reality project. So it had to be low poly, but this is what the augmented reality looked like. This is for Alexander McQueen. He's no longer with us, but he was really into bugs. I didn't do the rigging or animation on this, somebody else did, but it's pretty cool. Little promo for shoes. That was a fun one to model. I'm just going to dial this in really simply right here. I don't need to spend a whole lot of time on that. Now the question is, do I want to separate this from the abdomen and make them two different parts? I think I might. But I don't know. They're pretty well connected. That might not necessarily be something I need to do. Let's work on that part. I took a lot of close-ups of the feet because the feet are almost always the most difficult thing to get reference on. So do save next. Let's see if we find a good image at the top of that. Oh, that one's good. Oh yeah, look at that. I love these things, little danger spikes. I mean, it almost looks like, geez. I mean, there's a definite separation here. Let's take a look at this guy. Wow. It's hard to tell. I mean, that's, oh yeah. Those little doohickeys are coming out of there. It's not just an embellishment on the elytra, it's an actual anatomical structure. That's cool. Who doesn't love that? Probably anybody who's gotten spiked by one. Really, insects are like, they're like living dinosaurs, man. They're so cool. They're just too small. I just wish they were huge. Like in Starship Troopers. In natural history museums, everybody's like, oh, dinosaurs, dinosaurs, dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are so great. Nah, man, the bugs, that's where the real action's at. Much more diversity with insects and arachnids than you have with giant lizards. Come on. Who are we kidding here? Right? You guys are with me, right? Dinosaurs stink. Right? Nobody's with me on that. Dinosaurs are awesome. Where did I find the macro shots? I took them this morning. I have this Beetle in my collection for a long time, meaning to get around to finally sculpting it. So I figured now that I've finished the Wasp, I decided to work on this one. So they're not great macro shots, but they're good enough. Let's do this. I think it's time for sculptures mode. I just have a little jewelry light box and the Canon camera DSLR, and so I just took some pictures with a macro lens. Thank you, ZBrush. We all know. Very proud of sculptures mode. Look at this guy. And so I just took the pictures this morning and took them into Lightroom, Adobe Lightroom real quick, and just cleaned them up and adjusted the exposure super fast. Just good enough for reference. Oh, this is like a sweater vest or something. The sleeves on this thing. It's a bug with a deadly sweater vest. Show my reference here. Get some meat between these spikes and the next part. Sorry, I stopped talking. Yeah, that's a really good point. In fact, my favorite scientist, E.O. Wilson, who is a famed entomologist, who passed away a few years ago, and that's exactly what he would say. He would say basically insects really do rule the earth, and specifically ants rule the earth. And we're the aliens. I mean, ants have been around for 50 million years, and we've been around for, what, a few million years? I'm talking about Homo sapiens, of course, not necessarily primates. But so there's a really cool book and very inspiring for science fiction writers called The Social Conquest of Earth by E.O. Wilson, and talks about the evolution of social species, not just human beings, but also ants and bees and social wasps and that kind of stuff, and how improbable, if you look at classic evolution in terms of Darwinian evolution, which, contrary to what some people would have you believe, is still a very viable and important feature of biology. The classic idea is that you pass on your genes to the next generation, along with who you mate with, assuming that you're not an asexual species, but regardless, you pass on your genes to the next generation, and natural selection weeds out those genes that are not favorable to survival, and maybe enhances or changes those that do. But the main thing is those genes are passed on to the next generation. But if you have something like an ant, which is a so truly social species, a useful social species, right? The only member of an ant colony that can pass on their genes is the queen. All the other ants are sterile female workers, right? They don't mate, they don't pass on their genes. They're all basically sisters. And the male ants, get all of their genes from the queen. So in other words, the queen ant goes out on a mating flight when they have wings. They mate with the male wasps. Take an example like fire ants, Solenopsis invicta. They mate with the male ants in the air, and they usually mate with, the queen will mate with 5 or 6 male ants at the same time. It's a wacky night of fun. And then the male ants drop dead, and then the queen goes on to found her own colony. So she's come from one colony, she's left that colony, and now she's founding a new colony. The old colony has their old queen, the new colony has this new queen. And so what she does is she finds a spot to establish a colony. Of course, she's exhausted. She doesn't have any food, so generally she'll chew off her own wings and eat them, and then immediately start laying eggs. And the first eggs to hatch are usually the minims, considered like the nursemaid ants, and they take care of the queen, and they start building up the ant nest if everything has gone well, and they've actually survived to this point, which is rare, but it does happen. The question becomes, if most of your population is made up by sterile organisms, how do they pass on the genes that ensures the next generation also has sterile organisms in it? Like, what's the advantage of it? The advantage is basically the group acts as a single organism or a super organism. So imagine all the cells in your body. If all the cells in your body could wander off and do what they need to do and then come back and meet up for dinner time, that's basically an ant colony. If you think of all the cells in your body, well, there's only a few cells in your body that can actually reproduce. That's not true. Obviously, we have cell division, but produce another organism, next generation, right? That would be your gonads. So the queen is essentially the gonads of the colony. A lot of science fiction authors will make the queen the head decision maker, but the interesting thing about ants and other social species is there is no head decision maker. It's decentralized. Just like your brain doesn't have a single cell in it that's like, I'm in control of all the other cells in your brain. You have a clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, but that's not quite the same thing. So it's kind of a conundrum in terms of how classical Darwinian evolution works. And this is something that actually bothered Darwin quite a bit, especially when it came to honeybees. Because if you wanted to stump Darwin, you'd be like, hey, what about honeybees? And it did stump him for a long time, and he came up with the concept of group selection, which is basically what benefits the group is the genes that will be passed on to the next generation. So it's a very complicated issue, but Social Conquest of Earth does a great job of explaining it, explaining the issues with it, and also how it's affected evolution of life on Earth. So if you're looking for something good to read, brainy book, I highly recommend that one. A lot of the books by Ed Wilson are great. Some are really dry and straight up scientific stuff like sociobiology and the superorganism and that kind of stuff. Other books are written for more of a general audience, and those are much more entertaining. So now that I mentioned the E word online, how many people are freaking out? Dinosaurs extinct. Nice. I'm hoping to do a YouTube video soon, on the, maybe top 5 or top 10 things I see that creature designers could be doing better with their insectoid organisms. I don't want to say do wrong. I want to say more, you know, because I hate those videos of like, this is what you're doing wrong. I'm like, shut up. I don't do anything wrong. More like missed opportunities in doing insect design. You know, the biggest one I see is eyes. Whenever I see somebody phone it in on the eyes for an insectoid creature, I'm like, come on, man, you missed like the best part. You know? So, I'll hopefully do that video soon. With some other ones. And I had this library of insects that I've been modeling over the past 10, 12 years. Actually, 14 years now. Then I'm going to start doing more stuff with. So I kind of would spend a whole lot of time just modeling one insect after another, one after another, one after another, and then moving on to the next one. So I have all these insects models that I need to start doing something with, these animations or whatever. I'm going to leave that there for now and call that good enough. Let's see. Okay, now that we have this, we can start to create more of that separation there. I can't wait to do the poly painting on this one. That's what I'm most excited about. Because I love the designs, and especially this one is so intensely symmetrical too. I mean, look at how symmetrical this design is. You know, that always freaks me out, because another kind of mystery of biology is like this right here is created by a cell that's all the way on the other side of the bug from this one. So understanding that this cell needs to produce a pigment and all these other cells need to produce a pigment to create this design that's symmetrical with that one, that's just crazy. A cool era of life on Earth to study is the Cambrian and the Precambrian era. That's when evolution was just messing around with all kinds of crazy ideas. I know I'm anthropomorphizing evolution, but all kinds of crazy critters were around back then. And some designs didn't make the final cut, or at least did not survive today, till today. So bilateral symmetry like we see in most organisms, like we see in us, that was obviously a winner. And it stuck around. Although there's plenty of examples of like radial symmetry, if you look at corals that are quite successful. And then of course you have L systems with plants. That's another, not really symmetry, it's a different way of organizing, I guess, which is kind of cool. Always freaks me out because corals are actually animals. You kind of tend to think of them kind of like plants, but they're actually in the kingdom Animalia, and they have a structure that looks a lot more like plants than most animals, depending on the coral. Did I lose my Dynamesh? Probably. Alright, yeah, it's closer now. It's starting to look like something. Maybe work on the head a little bit. What I will be doing, I will do the poly paint when I get up to that stage. So think of it as painting out the diffuse pass or albedo or base color, whatever you want to call it. I usually do that in ZBrush. And then I'll create a low poly model with UVs and a high poly model that's been decimated, bring those into Substance or Marmoset, and then use that to do all my final textures. If it's something that I'm gonna render in Maya or another 3D program. Sometimes when I don't have time to do that, I'll just do a poly paint and render it in Keyshot. which is a great way to do something really quickly if you need to, again, get like client approval or something. Keyshot's great for that. And of course, also Redshift for ZBrush is also great, like I was demonstrating last week. Which, you know, of course, reminds me of that. Okay, still moving around. Curious about rendering in ZBrush? I have a new course on Udemy, Demystifying ZBrush Materials, Standard, Matcap, and Redshift Materials. Check it out, it's brand new, ZBrush 2024. And then I have some other courses as well, so just taking an opportunity to plug that. And let's move on to the head, my favorite part. I always love the head. So let's see if I can find some good reference for my head. This one's a little bit, I'm going to use the F reference that I found online. I don't think this is the exact same species, but I think it's fairly close. But you can see this is one of those things I love where the eyes actually wrap around where the antennae come out. That's always really cool. Yeah, this is a pretty decent one for the head. Good enough for now. So this is going to be the mouth. And I'm going to deal with the mandibles and that kind of stuff later. And let's see. What I should do is just think about it like this. Now up the resolution and draw in this. This is cool. I mean, this looks like a superhero type deal. Another cool thing about insects, I'm full of cool insect facts, that freaked me out when I first learned about it was that essentially ants invented agriculture long before human beings ever showed up on the scene. So if you guys have probably seen, like in the Disney Bugs Life series and other documentaries, the leafcutter ants, South America, really truly amazing species of ants, because one specific species, in fact one colony, can have vastly different looking members of the colony. Like the soldiers and the workers can come in very different sizes, and they all have their own little jobs. But what they'll do is, of course, they go out into the jungle and they cut leaves of various plants, usually specific plants, and they bring these leaves back to the nest, and then they plant, or I should say bury the leaves, and a fungus will grow on the leaf in the nest, and the fungus is what they live off of. So they feed that to the queen, they feed it to the larvae, they eat it themselves, and that's their primary source of nutrition, which is really wild. Again, how did that ever come to be? I don't know. It's absolutely crazy. But it's really, really cool. So we like to think of ourselves as being very clever, but ants were doing that long before we came along. And if you ever get a chance to read about ant warfare, that's really interesting too, especially when two nests of the same species will fight each other. And that's usually the most vicious fighting of all, because they're fighting over the same resources, right? And with, like, I think army ants and driver ants and some of those other like mega colony ants, they actually have specialized jobs within the army. And the wars, at least the ones that I've read about, often resemble. Imagine remember the orcs attacking Gondor in The Return of the King? That's what an ant warfare is like. They're a lot like orcs, which is really cool. So they have their cave trolls, and all the other different size ants will go, and it's really awesome. It's a sight to behold. That's in a book called Journey to the Ants by E.O. Wilson. He talks a lot about that kind of stuff. But there's also a really cool movie that you can see online, YouTube for free, a documentary called Ants, Nature's Secret Power. That one's really cool. I just love it because it has really creepy, freaky music and some great footage of ants. And just all around entertaining movie. I think they have a scene in the movie where this bear goes after a colony of bees for the honey. The bear is tearing apart the colony of bees, and then the bees manage to scare the bear off, but then the ants come and attack the colony of the bees, and the ants just completely destroy the bees, and it's truly insane, man. Okay, and then just kind of blocking this in. Let's see. So this is kind of raised. I'm going to mask this. Okay, he looks very happy. I don't think he needs to be looked that happy. There we go, that's better. Looks like Kermit the Frog. In the real world, speaking of Kermit, pigs and frogs rarely mate. If they do, they hardly ever produce viable offspring. I think Kermit just had a weird fetish, a freaky fetish. But you know, he was pure Hollywood, so it's not surprising. Okay, let's take a step back here and see how it looks. What I should do, and what I'll do for next time, is break out the old microscope and take some really macro shots of this thing. I don't know if I can figure out how best to do that. I also have some USB microscopes I could break out. We could take a look at it through there, because that's the only way I'm going to really see what's going on with the mouth parts here. And then this we can see it actually needs to be moved up a bit. This is the part that gets tough when you're trying to resolve a bunch of two-dimensional images. And these hard to reach or hard to visualize spots. But that's also the fun of it. This guy's got some frilly eyes. You're gonna see what's going on this part as well. Cool, looks like he's wearing sunglasses. Looks like the in Aliens, the pilot, we got schlorped by a xenomorph. She wore the aviator glasses. I always loved that character. Feel bad for her. She didn't deserve it. And this comes all the way up here and joins again. It's wild. Let's take a look back. Let's do a save next real quick. I gotta do something about the mouth because it looks ridiculous. But let's save first. Oh yeah, honeypot ants are really cool because their abdomens just grow to this freaking enormous size. And then there's an artist who would just basically feed the honeypot ants various different color, sugary water with different food coloring in it. You get those brilliant greens and blues and reds and that kind of stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of ants have two stomachs. They have a personal stomach and a social stomach. I think honeypot ants are the most exaggerated form of that. But the social stomach, they'll store extra food to bring it back to the colony. It's better view of the mouth. So you can see these are the mandibles right here, and then we have the palps right here. So maybe I'll block those in just so it's, because it looks cool. Why not? And a couple ways we can do this. Just get some geometry in here real quick. So this is a palp right here. Too blurry. Oh, too upside down. Too blurry. This one's not bad. I mean, this is the kind of thing you might want to take into Photoshop and just like kind of trace around as best as possible. Obviously look at other evidence online, but or reference. But here's a good view of one of the palps right here. And then they have a second set right here. It's pretty typical of insects. And then above this we have the mandibles, chewing parts. On my YouTube channel, which you should subscribe to, I do have a video on mouth parts that I was doing a while back, which I got to finish. Various insect mouth parts. This is no, you should go back here. Okay, yeah, let's fix this. Need to create some space here. Overdid the eyes there. Let's try the front. No, not too bad. So what I'm going to do here is and put a little mask right there. Just one way to get some geometry in here is without having to mess around with it too much. And then I'll just do a little extraction. Just a quick way to get some geometry in there so we can start blocking in some mandibles. These are going to be asymmetrical, of course, so right now I'm working with symmetry, but once I get a basic shape in there, that's looking goofy, but cute. A little on the Pixar side. And tiger beetle has really cool mandibles. I have a tiger beetle model somewhere. Let's see if we can find more images of the mandibles itself. Of course, this might help. Yeah. I think it's a different species, but at least it gives us a good idea of. So they're kind of overlapping there. What I'm going to do is ask. These might end up being placeholder mandibles for now. So cute. Fill this in a little bit. And I'll usually separate the eye into a separate surface as well, so that I can bring in the ommatidia correctly. This one has got very, very fine detail in the eyes, so that's going to present a challenge. My dog agrees. The other interesting thing about insects is we really don't know much about the way they looked until we had microscopes, right? Or until we had lenses that were high quality enough that we could actually see the miniature. Because if you imagine your entire existence never being able to get a close-up to an insect, any more close-up than you can see with your naked eye, you really don't have much of an idea of how intricate their structures are. that's always an interesting thought, I think. It's the same thing with like life underwater. We take for granted how much we understand like deep sea life now. That's only because how long has scuba diving been actually an option? Like, and not that long, maybe 100 years at most. Really, I mean, aside from those ridiculous, get-ups of the Jules Verne kind, who we associated with Jacques Cousteau and Steve Zissou. That's only been around for a short amount of time, so we really haven't had that much information on deep sea life until recently, which is kind of cool. Anything beyond, deeper than what you could go if you were diving for clams or sponges or whatever. It's going to take me a while to get this exactly right. A lot of times these things will look terrible for the longest time, and then all of a sudden they'll just start to click in. So I just keep working at it and redoing the same parts over and over again until that clicking happens. Now, you guys know that's the way it is with all art, Looks very happy. He's very pleased with himself. I'm a beetle. I reckon if he's a longhorn, he should have a southern accent, right? Bobby? Damn it, Bobby. I'm a beetle. This is the kind of wraparound thing that they look really cool, but it's not always easy to achieve, at least at first. Also, I'm sculpting in orthographic mode as opposed to perspective. That can change things quite a bit. So let's see if we sculpt in perspective mode for a little while. See if that helps resolve some of these issues. He's so happy. At long last, somebody appreciates him. Even though he's been sitting dead in my box for 5 or 6 years. Once we get in some of the other mouth parts, which I'm not going to be able to do today, but probably next week, I think it'll stop looking so much like the guy's laughing and a bit more grisly and buggy. Also, I need to get in this kind of overall shape. That's not helping. More and more like Kermit the Frog every second. We Let's take a step back for a second and assess the situation. So, I mean, overall, as a block-in or the beginnings of a block-in, it's not bad. You know, one thing that doesn't help is these antennae are so incredibly thick and not long enough. Oops. Let's bring down the Z intensity of the smooth brush. Alright, coming up on about 12 more minutes left of my live stream today. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. Again, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Boopatone. Send me a message with the word Beetle, and I'll send you a link, Dropbox link to my reference photography here, such that it is. Can't have too much reference, right? I'll do this all. These guys way out. It's probably too long, but it looks cool. Let's see, can we find a better image of the antenna, how long they actually are? Well, let's talk to our friend here. Okay, so they're pretty long. They're longer than the long legs, and they do a little curl around, so let's do that. And kind of go straight up for a moment and then start the curls. Let's do this. Lock the camera. Get out the old spiral brush. Hello, spiral, where'd you go? There you are. Bring this down to intensity of 1. And the draw size. That's looking pretty good. Brain stopped. There it goes. I use the spiral brush a lot for straightening things out. It's a really useful brush. Secret is to lower the Z intensity though. Okay, that's just kind of a rough block-in for the antenna for now. At least now it's looking a bit more like a longhorn beetle. I feel like the back legs could be longer. Not according to my reference imagery. And if we look at the front legs, we get this cool section right here, and then a kind of a curve, a doohickey like that, which is cool. So overall, it's not far from being the right length. Maybe just a little bit more. It's almost time for dinner for dogs. They're bugging me. Let's do a dynamesh there. A little bit of inflate. I think these legs are going to be some of my favorite parts to do, just because they're so cool and they're so detailed. do a save next. Yeah, so not bad for, you know, a couple hours of blocking it in. It's rough, admittedly, but next live stream, which will be next week, Thursday evening Pacific time, I will continue working on this Beetle and focus on starting to get in some of the detail here. I think this part looks really cool. And, you know, just also double checking and see what's off and where it needs to be fixed. I like this one because the legs are all different. It's kind of boring when the legs are all the same. Of course, it's more work when the legs are all different, but it's worth it because it's more interesting. But yeah, that's my Longhorn Beetle for now. He's looking a little. I think he needs to flatten a bit. The real thing is a bit more sleek. You know, has this kind of sleeky, swoopy kind of stuff going there. So I need to fix that, as well as some other aspects, and then get into detailing. Always my favorite part. So I hope you guys have enjoyed today's live stream. I certainly have. It's always fun starting a new project, and I'm going to take this one as far as I can go. Get it up super detailed, poly painting the whole bit. So make sure you tune in every week. Check out for when I'm on the schedule, because my schedule is a little bit in flux right now, being a freelancer and all, so I've had to move around a few things. But also, if you check out my Instagram, I always put an announcement on my Instagram, which is bluepatone01. You can see the link in the description here in the video. I have a link to my YouTube and my website and my Instagram. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, that's where I usually post when I'm going to be doing my live stream. And once again, please take a few moments to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and it's Bluepatone. And if you subscribe and send me a message with the word Beetle in it, I will send you a link to Dropbox folder where you can grab all these reference images that I was using today. At least mine, not these two because they came from the web, but the other ones I put into a folder. They're pretty high res, so that I think they make for a nice reference. So again, send me a message, subscribe on Bluepatone, subscribe on YouTube to Bluepatone, and send me a message where I can email you the link, or you can put it in the comments on the YouTube video for this live stream or whatever. Just send me a message and make sure you subscribe, and I will send you a link. Okay, cool. I said that about 18 times now. So thanks very much for watching, and I will see you next time, and have a good week. That's my dog. She's groaning in the background. Bye.